The worst guest we've ever had, because people used to ask me who the worst guest was.
Yes, always.
And I never had an answer, because you don't want to offend anyone.
Yes, of course.
But then I can now say it's Harvey Weinstein, because he was on the show.
Really? And was he a bad guest?
Apparently, yes.
At 62, Graham Norton finally broke his silence. After decades of witty banter, unforgettable interviews, and hosting some of the biggest names in showbiz, the sharp-toned talk show legend admitted there were 6 celebrity guests he absolutely couldn't stand, and these aren't just any names. From drunken antics that spiraled out of control, to dead silent interviews that left entire audiences cringing, Norton revealed moments so awkward they nearly derailed his show. Some of these guests are Hollywood heavyweights. Others, household names you'd never expect to end up on this list. So, who made the cut? And what exactly happened behind the scenes that made Graham Norton call them the worst of the worst? Stick around, because you're about to hear the untold stories behind the 6 interviews he hated most. And before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the chaos that's coming next. When it comes to live television, chaos can be entertaining. But in 2013, chaos nearly sank the Graham Norton show. That night's culprit? Mark Wahlberg. From the moment he stepped onto the set, something fell off. Wahlberg arrived visibly intoxicated, his behavior already hinting that this would be no ordinary interview. Instead of blending into the show's playful rhythm, he bulldozed over it. He interrupted conversations, steamrolled jokes, and threw out remarks that were more crude than clever. Sitting next to comedian Sarah Silverman, he cut her off repeatedly with erratic outbursts, leaving her smiling politely while clearly wishing she could vanish into the couch. But the most infamous moment came when Wahlberg took things way too far. In a drunken attempt at humor, he climbed onto Graham Norton's lap, slurring his words as he draped an arm around the host. The audience laughed nervously, unsure whether to clap or cringe. Norton, always the consummate professional, tried to keep the tone light, but his stiff posture told the real story. He was deeply uncomfortable and just trying to stop the evening from unraveling. In later interviews, Norton admitted Wahlberg was just out of it. Wahlberg himself brushed it off with casual humor, saying he had simply enjoyed himself too much before the show. But for many fans, the incident crossed a line. Instead of a charming star, they saw an actor who had no respect for his fellow guests or the host. What should have been a fun, lighthearted episode turned into one of the most talked about disasters in Norton's career. Proof that even A-listers can turn a hit show into a cringe fest when the drinks flow too freely. If Mark Wahlberg's problem was doing too much, Mickey Rourke's was the exact opposite. His appearance on the Graham Norton show wasn't wild or chaotic. It was painfully flat, almost like he didn't want to be there at all. From the second he walked on stage, sunglasses on, and his little dog Loki perched in his lap, the energy in the room plummeted. Rourke answered questions with short, mumbled replies that went nowhere. While most guests on Norton's couch thrive on banter, Rourke seemed determined to shut it down. Each time Norton tried to spin a lighthearted story, he was met with a one-word answer or a deadpan response that killed the rhythm instantly. Even attempts to connect on a personal level failed. When another guest mentioned their own dog, hoping to spark some warmth, Rourke barely nodded. The silence was so heavy, it left the audience squirming, unsure whether to laugh, wait, or cringe. What made it worse was his body language. Instead of leaning into conversations, Rourke reclined back in his chair, arms folded, often staring off camera or down at Loki. He looked physically present but mentally checked out. For Norton, a host known for pulling stories out of even the shyest stars, it was an uphill battle from start to finish. Fans had expected the fiery, unpredictable Rourke they'd seen in interviews before, but what they got was someone distant, disinterested, and unwilling to engage. And unlike chaotic guests who at least create spectacle, Rourke's silence created a vacuum. It wasn't explosive. It was simply awkward. For Norton, it was one of the most exhausting interviews of his career. Sometimes the hardest guest isn't the loudest one. It's the one who gives you absolutely nothing. Not every difficult guest storms the stage or refuses to speak. Sometimes the problem is much subtler, and Kevin Costner's appearance proved exactly that. Unlike Mark Wahlberg's drunken antics or Mickey Rourke's icy silence, Costner wasn't rude or chaotic. Instead, he was simply too serious. From the beginning, it was clear that his thoughtful, measured tone didn't mesh with the fast-paced comedic rhythm of the Graham Norton show. Where most guests came ready to laugh, joke, and swap funny stories, Costner treated every question as if it were a press junket during Oscar season. One telling moment came when Norton tried to spark humor by asking about Dances with Wolves. Specifically, he teased Costner about having to direct actual wolves on set. The setup was perfect, light, cheeky, the kind of question that usually lands an amusing anecdote. Instead, Costner gave a flat, "yeah," before rambling into a long, confusing analogy about vacuum salesmen that lost both Norton and the audience. This pattern repeated throughout the interview. Norton would tee up a witty exchange, only for Costner to answer with literal, overly earnest responses that killed the comedic timing. His posture added to the stiffness, polite but rigid, sitting upright as though he were at a press conference instead of a talk show designed for playful chaos. To be fair, Costner wasn't being difficult. He was engaged in his own way, but his energy simply didn't belong in Norton's format. As Norton later admitted, some people just don't get the show, and that makes for a very long evening. Costner's appearance wasn't scandalous or offensive, but in the world of late-night television, sometimes being too serious can be just as awkward as being out of control. Robert De Niro may be a living legend, but on the Graham Norton show, his reputation as one of the toughest interviews in Hollywood was put on full display. From the very moment he sat down on the red couch, the energy in the studio shifted. While other guests joked, laughed, and shared stories, De Niro seemed almost allergic to conversation. It wasn't that he was hostile. In fact, he was polite. But polite doesn't make for good television. His answers were brief to the point of painful. A nod here, a muttered, "yeah, there," maybe a half smile if you were lucky. Each time Norton lobbed him a fun, open-ended question, the actor responded with a wall of silence or a few clipped words. The effect was excruciating. At one point, after yet another dead-end answer, Norton broke the tension with a line that summed up the entire ordeal. "This is hard work, Robert." The audience laughed, but everyone knew the truth. Norton was pulling teeth just to keep the show alive. This wasn't unique to Norton, either. De Niro has a long history of disliking interviews, often shutting down when asked about his personal life or career. But the format of the Graham Norton show made the contrast even starker. Surrounded by lively, talkative guests, his silence stood out like a thundercloud in an otherwise bubbly atmosphere. Body language told the rest of the story. De Niro sat stiffly, hands folded, rarely making eye contact. He looked more like a man waiting for a dentist appointment than someone celebrating a legendary career on a talk show. For viewers, it was a rare moment when even Graham Norton, the master of coaxing stories from reluctant stars, met his match. De Niro wasn't just quiet. He was immovable. Before his downfall and public disgrace, Harvey Weinstein was already a guest that Graham Norton wished had never walked onto his set. Unlike actors, comedians, or musicians who came ready to play along, Weinstein wasn't a natural fit for a late-night television. He wasn't there to share funny anecdotes or charm the audience. He was there to dominate. From the start, the atmosphere shifted. While Norton's show depends on witty exchanges and group banter, Weinstein bulldozed the conversation. He cut off fellow guests mid-sentence, interrupted Norton's questions, and repeatedly redirected the spotlight back onto himself. Instead of letting the evening breathe, He filled every gap with long, self-congratulatory stories about the films he produced, the stars he discovered, and the awards he claimed credit for. Norton, known for his calm composure, looked visibly strained. His trademark smile was tighter than usual, his body language cautious, as though he were navigating a minefield. He pivoted constantly, trying to redirect Weinstein's rambling monologues back to something resembling entertainment. But the chemistry never came. The discomfort in the studio was undeniable. Jokes fell flat, the audience laughed nervously, and other guests seemed unsure how to respond. What should have been a lighthearted evening felt more like a press conference, staged to showcase Weinstein's ego rather than to entertain viewers. In hindsight, the moment feels chilling. Years later, when Weinstein's scandals erupted, fans revisited that interview and recognized the red flags. The arrogance, the condescension, the sense that he believed himself untouchable. For Norton, who's endured every type of guest imaginable, this was one of the rare times the show was hijacked entirely. Not chaotic, not silent, just suffocating. And for Norton, it was unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Of all the guests Graham Norton has ever hosted, one name stands out as the most excruciating experience of his career: Daryl Hannah. Unlike Wahlberg's drunken chaos or Weinstein's overbearing ego, Hannah's appearance wasn't loud, scandalous, or dramatic. It was something worse for a talk show host: absolute silence. From the moment she sat on the iconic red couch, it was clear something was wrong. Hannah gave one-word answers, avoided eye contact, and seemed almost detached from the entire room. Norton, who can usually spin gold out of even the quietest guests, tried every trick in his playbook. Jokes, light questions, playful hypotheticals. Nothing worked. The silence that followed each attempt was brutal, stretching just long enough for the audience to squirm in their seats. What made it worse was that Hannah wasn't hostile. She didn't argue or cause a scene. She simply refused to engage. Unlike Robert De Niro, whose quiet intensity at least allowed others to carry the energy, Hannah's dead air sucked the life out of the entire segment. Norton later admitted the experience left him scrambling with nowhere to go. He called it like she had been dragged there against her will. The discomfort spread beyond the couch. The audience, used to laughter and quick exchanges, shifted nervously as the minutes dragged on. Even the other guests struggled, glancing between Norton and Hannah as if waiting for someone to break the ice. But it never happened. For a host who has handled drunk celebrities, arrogant moguls, and fiery divas, this was the one moment he truly had no way forward. And years later, when asked who his worst guest of all time was, Norton didn't hesitate: Daryl Hannah, the star who gave him nothing. For Graham Norton, difficult guests weren't just awkward moments. They were tests of endurance. Hosting the Graham Norton Show is a balancing act. He isn't just interviewing celebrities. He's orchestrating a conversation between multiple big personalities, keeping the laughs flowing and making it all look effortless. But with guests like Wahlberg, Rourke, Costner, De Niro, Weinstein, and Hannah, that job became almost impossible. When Wahlberg climbed onto his lap, Norton forced a smile, but his stiff posture revealed his discomfort. When Rourke sat in silence, Norton filled the gaps with nervous energy. When Costner dragged a light question into a rambling analogy, Norton nodded politely while frantically searching for a new angle. And when Weinstein hijacked the conversation, Norton's body language screamed that he was walking on eggshells, trying to steer the show without sparking open conflict. Even the audience could sense the strain. They weren't just watching the stars. They were watching Norton, carefully juggling chaos, silence, and arrogance all at once. His gift as a host is making guests feel comfortable, drawing out the best in them, and masking the work it takes to keep things lively. But in these rare moments, the mask slipped, and viewers caught a glimpse of just how much pressure he was under. It's a reminder that talk show hosting isn't about asking questions. It's about controlling the unpredictable, smoothing over disasters in real time, and doing it all with a smile. Norton's ability to survive these moments is exactly why he's one of the most respected hosts in the world. But behind the charm, these 6 interviews proved that even the best in the business can be pushed to their limits. The truth is, the Graham Norton Show isn't like other talk shows. It thrives on spontaneity, guests sharing drinks, bouncing off each other, telling stories that are funny, outrageous, or even a little embarrassing. The magic comes from the chemistry between people who aren't afraid to let their guard down. But that very format is also why certain celebrities crash and burn. For stars like Kevin Costner, the problem was mismatched energy. He treated Norton's questions with the seriousness of a press junket, not realizing that fans weren't tuning in for measured analysis. They wanted quick laughs and quirky stories. For Mickey Rourke and Daryl Hannah, the issue was refusal to engage. Their silence wasn't just awkward, it actively shut down the flow of conversation, leaving Norton with nothing to build on. Others, like Mark Wahlberg, went in the opposite direction, bringing too much energy in the wrong way. His drunken antics may have seemed like entertainment at first, but quickly veered into disrespectful chaos that threw the entire set off balance. And then there was Harvey Weinstein, a guest who came not to play along, but to dominate. His arrogance didn't just clash with the show's playful tone. It poisoned the atmosphere altogether. The pattern is clear. The Graham Norton Show only works when guests understand that it's not about them individually. It's about the collective energy on the couch. The show's charm is built on shared laughter, playful digs, and a host guiding the chaos with wit. But when one guest refuses to play the game, whether through silence, seriousness, arrogance, or overindulgence, the magic falls apart. And as Norton himself once said, some people just don't get it. So, there you have it. The 6 celebrity guests Graham Norton admitted he hated the most. Mark Wahlberg's drunken chaos, Mickey Rourke's icy silence, Kevin Costner's misplaced seriousness, Robert De Niro's reluctant mumbling, Harvey Weinstein's suffocating arrogance, and Daryl Hannah's unforgettable dead air. Each appearance was different, but all left the same mark. Moments that Norton himself would probably erase from the show's history if he could. What's striking isn't just who these celebrities are, but how badly they clashed with a format designed for laughter and charm. It proves a simple truth. No matter how famous, no matter how talented, not every star is built for a talk show couch. And sometimes, the very traits that make them legends on screen can make them unbearable in front of a live audience. Yet, in every disaster, one thing stands out: Graham Norton himself. Whether he was smiling tensely under Wahlberg's drunken arm, scrambling to fill the silence with Rourke or Hannah, or walking on eggshells with Weinstein, he never let the show collapse. Those rough nights may have tested him, but they also cemented why he's considered one of the sharpest, most resilient hosts in television. So now the question is yours. Which of these appearances do you think was the worst train wreck? Was it the drunken lap climbing, the dead silence, or the suffocating arrogance? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into late-night disasters, don't forget to hit like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories Hollywood wishes you didn't remember.